Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneider, joined as always my co-host Nick Velato. Like the new poster in the background he's got there. I think he put that up last podcast.
Yeah.
Sadly for us, unlike last night's live show, we don't get to enjoy Phoenix, Nick's dog, just lounging on that bed over there.
He's sleeping somewhere, Dan. But this poster was at my parents' house for like the last decade. I got this prom weekend back in like
Oh my God.
2008 at the Jersey Shore. But look how freaking beautiful it is.
It is a nice.
It's an honor because I got it in 2008, but it's an honor of the 2007 New York Giants. It has like them all on there. There's only a few mistakes, and I've meticulously looked at it for years now, and I can point out the mistakes. But how freaking cool is that, dude?
What are the mistakes?
Ruben Drones is on there, I believe, but I don't think they wanted it to be Ruben Drones. I think they wanted it to be Bradshaw. Somebody is not numbered correctly. It might be Justin Tuck.
Oh God, you got Tuck's number wrong.
Yeah. It's like on the helmet, the number is wrong. Like it's 91, like you can see it clearly, but then they put the numbers in between the stripe on the helmet, and those are a little off on like two of the players.
Yeah, well, it's still a cool poster. Looks really sweet. I need to get one for the back here. I've been wanting to get a poster here. I think I'm going to try to get a Big Blue Banter poster to hang up on the wall back there. So then when I do the CBS podcast 3 times a week, to be on the box scores mailbag, it'll just be that, and I'll get free advertising.
Honestly, I'm a little upset, Dan, that you have not done that.
Well, I don't know how to. It's more out of just like being an idiot and not knowing where to create a poster online. Like,
oh, bro, just Google that shit, man. You'll find that.
I know.
That'd be great branding for us, though. For
I know.
sure.
It'll be done soon. But today we're here to talk about the defense on tape, film review. What were your initial thoughts after watching the tape of the Giants defense in this game?
They got carved up in cover one. That was my primary initial thought. I think we mentioned that on the stream. It seemed like every time they went into single high cover one, Russell Wilson had a response for that. And it made me think, are the Giants just bad in man coverage? And I don't think that's the case. I think this was a little bit more circumstantial. I think Andrew Phillips struggled in this game with his positioning, and he put himself out of position a few different times, and he could not recover. That happened against, I think, George Pickens once. It happened against Calvin Austin 2 or 3 times, and then Van Jefferson. It was not the best game for Andrew Phillips. But I went back and I watched some of the Eagles tape and some of the Bengals tape, and some of those sacks, a lot of those sacks actually against the Eagles were cover one sacks. So the Giants are getting home in cover one. So I don't necessarily think it's this team can't play man coverage. I just think this was a really bad performance against a Pittsburgh Steelers team with Russell Wilson, who throws excellent jump balls and excellent touch passes deep, and a few of the Giants defenders were out of position. The secondary, being as jumbled up as it was with Deonte Banks' benching, which we'll get into here in a little bit, might have messed with their ability to actually effectively play man coverage, although man coverage is typically a more simplified coverage rather than zone coverage. So we'll get into Greg Stroman Jr., we'll get into Deonte Banks, but what was your primary takeaway?
Yeah, I was thinking about like the ways that the Steelers beat the Giants, and it was kind of a different. To me, it was a tale of two different halves. In the first half, they beat him, and Bill Belichick did a great job explaining this was outside runs, cutbacks into the C gap. And it felt like the Giants were able to figure that out. It felt like at first they thought they could fit from too high, and then ultimately they had to adjust to stop the run and stop what Arthur Smith wanted to do, which opened up those opportunities in the passing game. Now, some have asked me, Nick, if benching Deonte Banks may have led to some of those big pass plays. Ultimately, from my vantage point, watching this game, I think a lot of it was just on Russell Wilson having a really good game in the deep half. Like the throw he made to George Pickens is one of the best throws. Now that I've seen it on tape, I said it last night, but now I've watched this on tape. I put it on Twitter today from both angles. It's one of the best throws by any quarterback this whole season, legitimately this whole entire season. And so he just really has good touch, like you've always talked about, Nick, good timing in the deep passing game. I feel like he had good command of that huddle. So ultimately, I don't think it was to do with the Deonte Banks benching. I think more so it was likely that the Steelers had a good quarterback play in this game, to be quite frank.
Excellent quarterback play when it mattered most as
Right.
well. Well, the Giants didn't have a chance at this guy, so it's not the biggest deal in the world. No, but I think we should probably start, though, by getting into this Deonte Banks situation.
Sure, let's start with that. It's a topic that people want to discuss.
Exactly, man. And I watched intently on Banks through the first 3 drives until he was benched. And there were 2 mistakes that made me tilt my head like I'm doing right now on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, were these mistakes that contributed to his benching? Now, they did not happen on the final drive. They happened on the second drive. And I have some of those plays and we'll go over them a little bit later, but I'll just talk about it right now. 3:20 and 3:16 left in the first quarter. Pittsburgh Steelers are in the red zone. I don't know if either of these mistakes were on Deonte Banks, but since he was benched, it's at least plausible that they were. It was the Van Jefferson play in the red zone where he ran an inside. It was just a simple slant from a stacked position. And then another receiver, I don't remember exactly who it was, ran an underneath out of the stack. Both Tyler Nubin and Deonte Banks jumped on the underneath route. Van Jefferson ran wide open directly at Jason Pinnock, who was the safety in the middle of the field. And Russell Wilson just threw it behind Van Jefferson because Van Jefferson was obviously supposed to sit because there was no one who took him. It was a blown coverage by either Nubin or Deonte Banks. And then on the very next play, and this play I'm about to talk about, I'm not as confident that this was necessarily on Banks, but it was a condensed formation. It was zone coverage. Deonte Banks was on Calvin Austin initially. Calvin Austin was the number 2 receiver. He ran outward, stemmed outward around the number 1 receiver who ran a drag or a cross. And then he ran a post, Calvin Austin. And Deonte Banks did not follow him. And Calvin Austin was sitting in the back of the end zone, jumping up and down, and Russell Wilson threw it late, and Isaiah Simmons knocked it down. That was on the play where Shane Bowen dropped 8, and Dexter Lawrence's big ass was just chilling there in the middle of the field. Now, I don't know if Deonte Banks was supposed to follow Calvin Austin there because he was sitting waiting for Van Jefferson's crossing route to come across the field, which was very late. And it didn't seem like the cornerback on the other side of the field was following, but it was 2 blown coverages that resulted in only 3 points in the red zone for the New York Giants. So incredibly lucky for the Giants. And both of those blown coverages were towards Deonte Banks' side. So what was your opinion on those 2 plays and those sequence of plays? Because he ended up getting trotted out there on the next series. And then it was the next series when he was benched.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's going to be tough for us to figure out what exactly led to this because they're not revealing any information. And Brian Dable's already confirmed that he will be starting next game. He'll be returning to a starting role.
Which I'm happy about.
Yeah. And it's funny because last week when we said on the podcast that they should bench him, we weren't thinking it was going to be an in-game benching. We thought it would be at the beginning of the game and then kind of for what he did. But, I think Dexter Lawrence handled it very well last week and said, we know what you're talking about and it won't happen again. Now, I don't think anything like that play against Jalen Hurts did happen again. So it's kind of putting on our detective hats and trying to figure out, is it, like you said, a blown assignment? Is it not understanding what they want to do schematically or not being on the right page or having that kind of issue from maybe that's a mental preparation, right? A mental error from a preparation standpoint. I don't know. Or is it that they didn't like how his technique on the George Pickens catch, even though he did kind of push him out and make it hard for him to get his second foot down. Maybe they thought, look, I've taught you for years, we've taught you day after day that you need to go for the ball in that situation. You just didn't. You did your own thing. I don't know. I really don't. All I know, man, is that it's not a good spot for us to be in, to have our first round pick from last year getting benched in game when we don't have a secondary to begin with. And, just the trend for this not being the direction we want to be headed in there.
Absolutely. That play must have pissed off Jerome Henderson.
Sure.
I'm sure the Giants are saying attack the football, the football.
And that's probably what did it.
That is probably what did it. Earlier on that drive, it was a 3rd and 4. He surrendered a quick hitch to George Pickens and then missed a tackle. But again, it wasn't an effort thing. He got hurdled by Najee Harris. That didn't appear, like we said on the stream, like an effort thing.
Sure.
There was another play, though, second quarter, 11:58 left, where Scotty Miller, Deonte Banks was off coverage. Scotty Miller runs about a 7-6 yard spot OTB over the ball, turns, curls, and ends up going incomplete and skipped into Scotty Miller. Banks is well off, but Banks is trying to communicate with his teammates that Miller went inside. I don't know if he's trying to push the coverage or exactly what he was attempting to do, but it was obvious that Deonte Banks was pissed, bro. And he's screaming, looks a little frantic. Then after the play, he's doing the whole, I'm going to throw my hands and like a little bit of frustration and bob my head in a way that definitely expresses disapproval at something. So that could also contribute to it. It could be Banks was in his own head and couldn't get out of his own way. And he was incredibly frustrated. So with all things considered, Dable decided to bench him and give Stroman, who did not play terribly, we'll get into him in a little bit, and give Stroman a chance, which is, again, man, you're talking about a first round pick in 2022 and then a first round pick in 2023 who are both on the Giants roster who are riding pine for practice squad guys.
I know.
What the hell, Dan?
It's weird. It's odd. It's not a good place to be in. But it is where we're at right now in within this situation. I thought there's some constants that we see on tape every week from the Giants. Dexter Lawrence is just unbelievable to watch. It just doesn't slow down. He just doesn't take a game off. It's unbelievable. This was another one of his best. Brian Burns, I thought, had a very good game on tape. Azeez Ojulari, someone you talked about a lot, really has been good in this opportunity with Kayvon Thibodeau out. Thought it was the best game of the season for Bobby Okereke. Not just the forced fumble. Just felt like he's getting a little bit more involved in some ways that we haven't seen in this scheme because he's obviously a better fit for the Wink Martindale scheme. We know that. I think we have enough of a sample size now to say that. And that's how it's going to be sometimes for players. They brought him in for that scheme.
But by better fit, though, I want to clarify this and also get your opinion on it.
Sure.
I think that defense just doesn't put as much on his plate. Whereas this defense requires your linebackers to do a lot. So you're a little bit more exposed as a linebacker. You don't have as much help up front. Because just think about it, man. Like Dexter Lawrence was a nose how much last year?
Right.
You don't really see him a lot as a nose this year. Now you did in this game a little bit, and it's dangerous. I miss it. I'll tell you that much. But I think it's more so that I don't think Bobby Okereke is a worse player or anything.
Yeah, there were a lot of those three inside with the two outside guys. A lot more help for any linebacker.
And I'll say in this game, it could be one reason why this was Okereke's best game. There was a lot more odd front. There was a lot more tight front. They're going up against Arthur
Smith. Yeah,
they're going up against Arthur Smith. So
maybe that was why it was Okereke's best game. That's an interesting take too.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? In this game, you had DJ Davidson go over, I think, 30 snaps.
Most snaps a year for him. Yeah,
DJ Davidson played 35. Raheem Nunez-Roches played 39. Dexter Lawrence played 47. And then you also had Elijah Chapman only played 12. So, he's more of that pass rusher. But Armon Watts played 21. So you have all of these big, beefy dudes out there playing a shitload of defense to slow down Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. I think a lot of that, too, was adjustments that the Giants made after the first two drives. They were like, no.
Doing a Nick Filato there, the big, beefy dudes.
Oh, dude, we love big, beefy dudes here. I love that, dude. Yeah, but that was an adjustment. They were like, we need to slow this down. And I'm sure they had that in their back pocket heading into this game, knowing Arthur Smith, knowing Pittsburgh Steelers, knowing what they want to do offensively, run the football, work the play action. I felt like Arthur Smith had a really simple yet good game plan against the Giants to do that. And the Giants responded well. And they were able to sack Russell Wilson 4 times. They were able to harass him. They just couldn't necessarily keep up with him in man coverage.
Yeah. And one note I had before we get into some play breakdowns, I was really excited to get my first real opportunity to watch Darnell Washington on tape because he was just one of the most, I love prospects like that, right? Like he's just such a unicorn prospect. And we studied him. We're just like, wow, this dude has an insane frame for a tight end. And what can he be? Because we saw some flashes as a receiver and he had made, and we're talking about like in the college level and then like throughout like the testing. And then he made one catch in this game. But man, he is, it's almost like having at times another offensive lineman out there with him on the field. He's a really good, fun piece. Like he's basically like, I feel like he gives them what Chris Manhertz gives the Giants to some extent, but just like a more athletic version of that.
Incredibly athletic. He's like the JPP of tight ends, Yeah. No, but seriously, watching him manhandle some of the Giants edge rushers. And it wasn't like the Giants edge rushers got manhandled the entire game, but just knowing that you have him out there to be like, oh yeah, take 51, you have him. And Azeez Ojulari is done.
He's better. He's a bigger frame than like a better frame than Ojulari. Like
much
in
bigger.
A one-on-one.
I think in the right system, he could be like just like insane in terms of like fantasy points. I think he's already a very good and useful football player, but he's behind. He's
pick by them. Just a good pick by them.
He's tight end too, though. That's the issue, right? Like he's like what Martellus Bennett was to the Dallas Cowboys when
before they got it. Wow, I like that. I even just like that comp for him, Martellus Bennett, a lot.
Yeah, I think that will definitely. That would be the number one comp. I would.
The Giants were able to break him out.
Yeah, they did, and he was there for a year, and then he left. And then he left. Exactly. Yeah, but I do like Darnell Washington. You want to talk a little bit about Greg Stroman?
I was going to get to him a little bit later with on Harold. Away, but you could talk about. Let's get into it now.
I think we should talk about it because the Giants have desperately needed cornerback depth, whether it be Trey Hawkins the third, who has not necessarily worked out. Drew Phillips played outside in this game. I still highly respect and believe in Drew Phillips' skill set. He didn't have the best game. It happens. Deonte Banks is going to play, but this Greg Stroman kid played 38 snaps, was the third highest graded PFF defender on the New York Giants. And if you look at his career, and it's a small sample size since he's only played 610 defensive snaps, this is a 7th round pick back in 2018 who's jumped around a lot of practice squads and back end of the rosters. He's that type of player. But if you look at his Pro Football Focus grades through his career, pretty freaking high.
Yeah.
He has 3 interceptions, 4 PBUs, surrendered 3 touchdowns, and only has 5 missed tackles in his career on 55 career tackles. He had 1 run fit in this game where he flew into the C gap and stuck Najee Harris. It might have been Jalen Warren. He stuck one of those guys and made a tackle. So I'm hoping that this is a player that can be that 4th cornerback, that if something does happen to Deonte Banks, that if something does happen to Adoree or Drew Phillips, you could stick him into the game and you wouldn't be absolutely toasted. He tackled George Pickens in the open on a 2nd and 13. I felt like he carried Scotty Miller well up the sideline, forced him a little bit off the red line towards the sideline, and then he got his hands up to knock the pass away and make it a difficult catch for Scotty Miller. So there were plays in this game where he rose to the occasion, and I'm hoping that he can be a player for the New York Giants, but it's way too early to tell. But his number was called, and he responded well.
Yeah, I thought you broke that down perfectly. It was usually when you get put in these situations, you can see really bad things happen. It's typically one of those situations where, right, we've had this happen as a fan base a lot, but it's good to see. And we've had some of the other side of it too. Blanking on his name, the kid we had, Fabian Moreau, but maybe he can be that Moreau of this year, and they need it. So
yeah, they absolutely need it. Yeah,
we'll see what will happen.
There was one play where George Pickens got him bad on a double move, and he was leaning, and he just reached his arm out and grabbed George Pickens' hip, and there was no flag, and I was just like, the officiating in this game was bad.
The officiating was terrible in this game. Not just against the Giants, but just terrible in this game. I still don't really understand why that wasn't at minimum running into the punter. I'll just never understand really what happened there.
You couldn't explain that to me. You couldn't explain how that's
the rule. Yeah, because the rule is supposed to be you need
hit the plant leg.
Yeah, your plant leg, and he didn't give him that room, the defender, unless they're saying he got pushed into him. But then on the replay, it didn't look like he got pushed into him. So it's a very odd call. Led to a punt return touchdown. It's like really effed up, but. I hate blaming the refs. Like, and it's funny because people are going to call me such a hypocrite, Nick. If the Giants ever get good, I'm going to be a big time ref blamer. I know that. I'm like a little despondent about the team at this stage of our lives with what we've been dealt with. And like, we're in a 2-5, we're 2-5 in a Monday night game. That's like basically meaningless, to be honest. I hate to say it, but true. But if they were like 5-2 and that shit happened, I would have went nuts. And I just know myself. I used to hate bad ref calls. And I've hoped that I've grown, Nick, over the years to the point where I can admit that like I shouldn't blame it on refs. Everybody gets bad calls, but I feel like it's so circumstantial because the Giants haven't been in important games in a while.
It does seem like forever since like I would like yell at the TV.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's maturity or it's the Giants that just sucked for so long.
Yeah. I know for me, it's most likely the latter. And I think anyone who's listened to this podcast and seen some of my explosive blowups and rants could probably say the same. For you, I think you've probably matured. Good for you on that front. Hopefully at some point I can get some control over my emotions as a human being. So I've improved in some degree. I had such a long way to go. That like it's just slow progress, but let's get into some play breakdowns here.
Great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. Turns out it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process was the time I spent on hold waiting to break up with my old provider. And you can have a similar experience. To get this new customer offer from Mint Mobile and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/BBB. That's mintmobile.com/BBB. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/BBB. That's 3 Bs. $45 payment upfront required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower, above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Hey, Giants fans, we've teamed up with Buck Foston to give away exclusive free apparel from hats to premium sweatshirts and hoodies. It's easy to enter. Just follow them on Instagram @_Buck Foston or sign up for the newsletter at buckfoston.com. Next, DM them our 20% discount code BLUE20 on Instagram or through their website's chatbot, and you're entered in the giveaway drawing. You can participate every week and boost your chances by tagging friends and liking posts. 3 winners are picked at random each week. It's simple, free, and a great way to score apparel from Buck Foston. You must reside in the United States to enter. Terms and conditions apply. Yeah, let's get into some play breakdowns. Absolutely. Again, glad the Giants' run defense solidified a little bit down the stretch of this game. Wish they were a little bit better in man coverage. But where we start is 11:40 in the first quarter, a 2nd and 9. This is the Pickens touchdown that ends up getting called back. Now we're just going to watch it real quick. Play action. Pickens comes wide open. I just love this route by George Pickens, man, this horizontal cross, because you can see to the boundary side, he's going to explode up right at Tyler Nubin, and he gives this little step. You see that little step upfield, and that gets Nubin to step upfield as well. That totally and completely threw Nubin off. That just subtle little step by George Pickens was beautiful because it allowed Pickens.
You could see him stumble a bit there, Nubin, and it really wins the route for him.
Exactly, because Nubin's attaching to this hip. This isn't just Nubin is unflexible and he sucks and no, this is a subtle move by George Pickens that is beautiful right there. That little move where he just shimmies his shoulders, opens his hips towards Nubin, and acts like he's stepping and going towards the back part of the end zone. Instead, he flattens out, and that gets Nubin all tied up, and it's an easy touchdown that ends up getting called back.
Yeah, and it's good ball placement, too, from an off-platform throw. This is what's impressed me a little bit about Russell in this game. He was moving out of pockets and then not setting his feet and still being able to rip balls on the money like this one from unbalanced base and without his shoulders squared. So he still had some of that like unique arm talent that he used to have, which I thought I didn't know if it was gone after his Denver days. The other thing about this play not about this play, but about Pickens, now having a chance to watch him on tape for a full game. Like, look, there's some off-field stuff with Pickens, whatever. I
think it's a little bit more than just there's some off-field stuff.
No, yeah, on-field, off-field.
I think it's like beyond, because like off-field stuff suggests that like he broke the law. I don't think it's any of that. I just think it's straight up like
he's a tough guy to manage.
Exactly. Yeah,
but
very tough guy to manage.
Here's my thing, Nick. We always talk about this. Like, we're bringing in the right guys for the building. We're doing this. We're doing that. Like, we got to make sure they're smart, tough, dependable. But like that hasn't gotten us anywhere. And we've passed over talent at times as a franchise because we're focusing on that. And that's not showing up at all in the box score. It's not showing up on the film, this whole supposed culture that we've built here. And what happens, what I see at least in front of my eyes, is a really talented player in Pickens, who's a really big problem for every defense that's going to match up against him. I don't know if I see that for Wan'Dale Robinson. He's a good, fine player for us.
It's not.
But it's just not like having this. And it would have been tough for us to manage. Can you imagine him on this team? Daniel Jones and with our offensive line, can you imagine how frustrated he would be and how bad it probably would have been going? So ultimately,
anything Pickens does is normal. He's a very unique and odd person. And if anybody wants to challenge me on that, just go and look up the day he was drafted and watch his reaction. It was the weirdest thing I've ever saw. I was like, wait, that's real? I thought it became a meme that went around the internet. And I didn't know at first that it was a meme. Like, I didn't know that was George Pickens. I thought it was like a joke, right? And he's just standing in front of his television. It was a very odd thing. But I think they wanted Wan'Dale, not to rehash this. They wanted Wan'Dale to fit a specific role that Kadarius Toney could not, because Kadarius Toney did not know the playbook.
And that's what we do, kind of. We buy guys, we draft guys for specific roles. They fit needs. Sometimes we bypass talent in the process.
And Wan'Dale was also, I think they wanted his toughness and they wanted his intelligence. Because they knew that he would know the playbook, would learn the playbook, would know how to operate as that underneath option.
And he's doing a good job with it. It's just, you watch Pickens and they don't even look on the same level as prospects.
They're not. They're completely different. All right. Another thing though about this play, Nick McLeod didn't have the best game in this one, and here you see him go and cover Adrian Robinson with Brian Burns, and he gets sucked down there, and that allows Pickens the space, because he doesn't sink underneath there. That's an issue. I didn't think Nick McLeod had a good game. I don't know about you.
No, definitely not one of his better games.
No, definitely not.
He hasn't been. I don't feel like he's been as good of a fit in this system as he was last year with Wink in general. But that's a
Wink like hardly played him though.
yeah. In the times, the very, very rare times he got an opportunity to play.
And now
Maybe it's just that maybe Nick, that's just the result of he's playing more and he's going to make more mistakes since we're getting a larger sample size.
Very well could be. Very well could be. Now watch Dexter Lawrence though. This is just insane. He lifts this this poor center. Gets lifted off the ground there, lifted off the ground again.
Right there.
And then he gets just tripped up by Jalen. I saw somebody online. They're like, yeah, well, he got tripped by Jalen. It's like, yeah, I know, but he still got lifted. He's like levitating in the air. Halloween has not happened yet. He shouldn't be a ghost like this. It's just crazy what Dexter Lawrence can do to opposing offensive linemen when he's one-on-one.
He's so strong.
He's so strong. His feet are so controlled. He plays with such balance. He gets low to the ground. He's incredibly flexible for a 350 plus pound player. He's truly unique. We've been saying it for years, man. He's truly a unique player in the NFL, a one-of-one type of player.
Yep.
All right, let's get to the next play. 1st and 10, 4:13 left in the first quarter. This is just a nice cutback by Najee Harris for 26 yards. Looks like Brian Burns just overplayed this, and then that forced Bobby Okereke into this tough spot to fill here. I don't think Brian Burns, who's playing more of a linebacker role here. Now he's in an edge spot. The Giants were doing this a lot where they would put him as an edge, and then they would also use him as a linebacker. And he just over pursues like crazy. And it's such a good run design by Arthur Smith to curl back Cam Hayward like that, or Cam Hayward's brother, the fullback. And Najee just bends it right around, and the Giants over pursue and they get caught. Great play. Now we're going to have, here's that miss I was talking about with Deonte Banks. We're going to see the stack. Banks in the other corner, they're communicating. Nice route and play design where you're going to have Van Jefferson bend inward and you're going to have George Pickens go underneath. And both Newbin and Banks react to Pickens. And luckily, Van Jefferson did not sit here because there is that void right there. He's wide open in the end zone. And Jason Pinnock is in the vicinity. And Russell Wilson had the right idea to put that football on him. But Jefferson just kept running. But this was one of the plays I was referencing, though, man. Like, I don't know who messed up. I don't know what the coverage rules is. I don't know if they're supposed to switch. I honestly don't know. But
something,
I don't think two guys are supposed to go to
the flat there. You're right.
And then here's the next one that I was referring to with Calvin Austin. Again, another tight stack. Giants were running man coverage. They don't run it here, but you have some guys react like it's man, like you have Pinnock, but you see no one goes with Calvin Austin. And you have Deonte Banks at the top of the screen, somewhat by himself, and then he sees the crosser coming in Van Jefferson, and Russell Wilson has to step up and away from Azeez Ojulari, or else this is going to be another touchdown pass to Calvin Austin. I just don't know if this is Deonte Banks' fault. So I don't want to insinuate that, but he was benched and people are looking for reasons why. And I'm just suggesting this is two blown coverages in the red zone at this towards Deonte Banks' side. So we should at least consider that.
Yeah, I think it's good evidence to put forward. We don't, again, know what his responsibility are, but what we can clearly say is the Giants blew coverages on both plays.
Yeah. And then that forced, who is that? Newbin to see what the hell is going on and get into position and still almost goes as a touchdown. Luckily, Isaiah Simmons knocks it down. Now here's the missed tackle by Deonte Banks. Again, doesn't look like a lack of effort to me.
No.
Comes down. He aims for the outside leg, forces him inside. Just does not wrap up. I would like to see a little bit more actually of a wrap up though, right? Like,
right.
Leaves his feet, just incredibly sloppy technique, but not necessarily a lack of effort.
But the technique could be a reason for him getting benched as well. That's the other thing, because they're teaching technique, and it's something they probably want to see some progress on.
Exactly. And we'll see it from this.
Yeah, that's really not good.
No. Aims for the outside leg, and then just, got to be better than that, man. Hopefully he responds like he did against Seattle, which seems like forever ago at this point. Remember that game? Jeez.
Yeah.
Now we're going to have the other nullified George Pickens. Imagine owning George Pickens in fantasy.
I know.
Oh my God.
I know, because I did have him last night in a matchup that I lost. And now it's always weird because he's going against the Giants, but I wasn't going to bench him.
Yeah. No, I get that. Another stack.
Great throw, by the way.
It's a high-low concept. Love this route by George Pickens, stem inward right at Jason Pinnock, explode outward. Deonte Banks does a good job. I'd say a solid job sitting on Calvin Austin and getting his eyes. You can see right here. He sits on Calvin Austin and then watch right at this moment. He's looking at Russell Wilson, sees the ball coming, and just doesn't attack the football and just hits George Pickens. And George Pickens can't get his damn foot down bounds and it ends up going incomplete.
I love this throw from Russell too. So decisive, so on time with it. Not a lot of wasted movement in his drop.
Yeah, Banks might have gave him a little bit too much time, but he had to cover Austin. Beautiful high-low, beautiful pass. Should have been a beautiful catch. And then you also had Brian Burns absolutely annihilate Russell Wilson on this play. Oh, that's got to be frustrating for a quarterback, Dan.
Yep.
Now, I think this is the first sack by Azeez Ojulari on 2nd and 7. Just bends the edge. Russell Wilson has some time. Again, look.
Great coverage.
And what is that? It's cover one. It's man coverage. The Giants are, it seems like the Giants are getting carved up in man coverage or they're getting home.
Yeah, right.
And this isn't a twist. Like they run a lot of twists. This isn't a twist. This is just Azeez Ojulari defeating his assignment and winning. And he has to run through Najee Harris too, who's aligned over top of him. Runs through Najee Harris and wins high side. Does a good job with his inside arm to pull down the inside part of number 77. And then he just flattens. And it's just kind of a really bad just move or lack of move from 77 of Pittsburgh. I'm not sure what he was doing there. Azeez takes advantage.
This was the Dexter Lawrence led sack.
Yeah, and Dex doesn't get any credit for it, but he just runs right through the offensive line. Burns
cleans it up.
Yeah, look at that. Just insane, man, how this guy splits double teams. And then runs through Jalen.
I love Jalen Warren China chip.
Yeah, hey, what are you going to do, right?
That's crazy. Just splits a double, and then Jalen Warren's waiting for him. Jalen Warren's like, fuck my life.
Jalen Warren is probably like 150 pounds less.
Yeah, it's like 150-pound difference or more potentially. And he's like,
more.
Shit.
Yeah, it's terrible, man. Here we have Stroman at the bottom of the screen. I think I referenced this a little bit earlier. This is where he just holds George Pickens on the double move, reacts, and he's like, oh, man, I'm beat. I'm just going to hold him.
Yeah.
Luckily, it was not called. He had a receiver fall at the top of the screen, too, but I don't believe Andrew Phillips touched him. I think he just ended up getting tripped up there.
What a move by George Pickens. I'm watching that double move at the bottom. That is filthy. That fluidity. My God, is he an athlete?
Yeah. I wanted to go over one more thing on this Lawrence sack, too, so I'm going to go back to the 3rd and 3. I think it was Drew Phillips. I wanted to highlight Drew Phillips on this play. So Drew Phillips, he is about 4 yards away from Scotty Miller. And this is going to be a pick play designed to target man coverage. And you're going to see Drew Phillips undercuts this. He does not flow over the top and squeeze. And just watch the athletic ability. That is not a good position to get in. But watch the athletic ability of Drew Phillips to carry Scotty Miller and stay right in that hip pocket. If Russell Wilson were to throw this football, it would have to be a perfect throw over the top because Drew Phillips, how he turns on a dime. Like, this is why I love Drew Phillips right now as a New York Giant, even though this was probably his worst game as a professional. It's because not a lot of NFL cornerbacks, the rarest of the rare human beings, can control themselves so swiftly and so smoothly when they're turning and they're accelerating and they're getting back into position and they're recovering from being out of position like a player of the caliber and the athletic ability of a Drew Phillips.
Yeah, it's a great take.
All right, let's get back. We already watched the 3rd and 13. Let's get to the 3rd and 8. This is the Calvin Austin touchdown. Now, I was talking about Drew Phillips positively. You have another stack. You get another man coverage. And Arthur Smith loved it every time the Giants were in this type of situation. They were going to be in man coverage on a 3rd and long, 3rd and 8. Okay, we're going to run some sort of play to take advantage of your leverage. And Drew Phillips overplays himself here. He turns. He thinks this is going to be an inside route from Calvin Austin. Calvin Austin just makes him pay. You can see the recovery, little speed turn, but Calvin Austin's way too quick, man. I remember him at Memphis. He was a dangerous player there, and he doesn't necessarily, quote unquote, worked out in Pittsburgh, but I also think that's not necessarily true because I think he's a very talented player.
Right.
He just hasn't had a role. I think if you give him a role, he could do things like this, and we saw it last night. And he just gets burnt. Yeah, Drew Phillips on this one.
Nice anticipatory throw from Russell Wilson. Puts it in the right spot, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Allows his receiver to run underneath it.
Exactly. Throws it to open space rather than where the receiver is when he's open.
You have Stroman trying to play outside in, trying to force Pickens to not go inside. Pickens goes inside, but it doesn't matter because Ends up being a touchdown. Guy waving the flag. Now we're going to have a 43-yard strike to Pickens, which is just an insane throw.
Crazy.
Again, it's another stack. It's another man coverage. Both those routes essentially run into each other, which throws off the coverage. And I believe that's Drew Phillips again, losing to George Pickens. And that's just tough, man. Like, that's
like walking the ball there. It's so accurate.
It's insane, man. This is one of the better throws I've seen all season, just right where it needs to be.
It's crazy throw. Almost turns it into a touchdown from some never should have been a touchdown.
I know, man. I know. And now here is a 3rd and 5 Ojulari sack in the red zone. Again, Ojulari wins high side. Now he's beating 67 instead of 77. 77 loses to Burns. Does a good job flattening at the top of the arc, but it probably would have been a sack for Brian Burns if Aziz doesn't finish it off. But Aziz is the one who gets the credit, who's doing a very good job without Kayvon Thibodeau here. And those are all the plays.
He built himself a nice resume if they were to trade him. I don't think they will, but even for free agency this offseason.
He's just going to get signed, though, dude. Like, the Giants aren't going to be able to sign him after
they can't.
Gave Brian Burns that contract and
right.
So he's leaving no matter what after the season, it seems.
True, like. Which some might say, oh, then they better trade him. Why not trade him? But then we watch Josh Uche go for a 6th-round pick, and it's like, did I really give an F about a 6th-round pick? I mean, I guess, but like, I'd almost rather just lose Aziz in free agency and maybe we'll get back a compensatory pick if somebody gives him a good contract, right? Like, you got to think about that too. Like, it's not always worth it to take the 6th-round pick because you might lose the comp pick. So I don't know, man. We'll see what the market is for these two players. Who you got for unheralded player of the game?
Unheralded player of the game for me was Bobby Okereke. I thought he had his best game. Again, some of this might have been because he saw a lot of beef up front, a lot of meat up front, and that allows the linebackers to operate in a much less constrained manner. So, but Bobby Okereke had a great game here, so I went with him.
I'm going Stroman for this. He put in a tough spot and didn't play unbelievable, but had moments like the ones you discussed. How about highest effort player?
I went with Azeez Ojulari. 2 sacks, just running around with his hair on fire. So, yeah, went with Azeez.
Dex for me. And I think Azeez is a good pick as well. How about best player? I mean, that's, I think, obvious in this one. Dex. Player you expect to see more from? I got one.
Deonte Banks, but that's an obvious one, ends up getting benched. So I'm going to go with my other, and I think this is going to be the same one as you, but we have not discussed this. Jason Pinnock.
Oh, shit, that is the same one as me. Jason Pinnock. We don't have the same doc either, so just random. But yeah, man, I think for Pinnock, for me, it's been kind of a disappointing season in general for him overall. I was hoping he'd take another step. He was somebody I thought was a nice little find by Joe Schoen, but I just don't think he's fit well so far in this system, and I think this was probably his worst game on tape.
I just wish he was a more sure tackler. I don't have it in front of me, but I am curious. How many missed tackles does Jason Pinnock have on the season? Because it just feels like it's probably a lot.
And that's something we said in the preseason, right? We talked about that as like his big flaw, potentially fatal flaw in his game that we hoped wouldn't crop up.
He has 9 missed tackles and a 20.9% missed tackle rate. That's high. He has 7.
I remember discussing that. We talked about that in the preseason, but fortunately, it's come to fruition for us. Hopefully, he can have a big second half. What about pass rushing grade 1 through 10?
I have a 6.4. It was solid. It was above average. It was good. It wasn't the best. I didn't think the Giants did not blitz a lot in this game. They were much
blitz in general with Shane Bowen much.
They don't blitz much in general. And you also don't want to blitz too free. If you're stopping the run, you don't need to blitz too frequently to run stop. And you might as well just drop into coverage. We saw multiple drop 8s too on some of these 3rd and shorts, especially in the red zone with Dexter Lawrence dropping in. That's funny. And Armon Watts is another player I wanted to just give my tip of the cap to. I mean, he's just another guy, 21 snaps thrown to the fire. I didn't think DJ Davidson had a terrible game either. First drive was a little iffy with some of these backup defensive linemen, but overall, I was more pleased with the backup defensive linemen than in previous games where they were just getting uprooted and drilled into the ground. And it was like, dude, these guys are horrible. How are they even on the roster? It was a little bit better in this game, and that could be because the Steelers' offensive line is beat up and not necessarily the most powerful. So we'll have to wait and see. One more thing I wanted to run past you. Or let's do run defense, and then I'll do this.
So 6.1 for me for pass rush grade. Run defense grade, what'd you got there?
4.2.
Okay, yeah. I thought so. It's weird because they shored up in the second half, but I thought a lot of that was just based on how they changed schematically. So just overall, I was lower on him. I gave him a 3.9.
Okay, so is Jordan Riley going to be done now?
Yeah, I don't know.
He
I don't
was
know
one
what
of
they're
the players who was just getting like thrown around, which
Yeah.
was very odd, right? Like he had a couple plays where you're like, oh, Jordan Riley. He
He
had a
is a
few.
7th round pick. Like, we have to remember that, like,
Of
just from the
course.
standpoint of can he transfer over?
Yeah, of course we have to,
Yeah.
but the Giants are still trying to find
Yep.
something to rectify this defensive line. I don't know if Watts is going to be that guy. He had one really nice play. I put it on Twitter if anybody wants to go and see it. But overall, Elijah Chapman didn't play nearly as much. Again, he's going to be that third
Just was
down
never
pass
yeah.
rusher.
Versus Arthur Smith offense, I didn't expect it.
Yeah, that's what his role is. Third down, allow him to pin his ears back and go and get him, and he'll be solid. I think he only played like 12 snaps in this game.
Yeah.
There's a lot of meat up front, a lot of DJ Davidson, a lot of Armand
It's
Watson.
Arthur Smith. You got to counter him.
And
But
then
yeah.
I'm wondering how they're going. I'm so curious to see how they adjust to Washington, though.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't know. They're gonna have to play it different than they played him the first week, the first matchup. Yeah,
I know. Just don't surrender a Hail Mary.
Yeah, Washington's defense has made so much improvement since then. It's gonna be an interesting game
for sure.
All right. Thanks to everybody tuning in. We didn't ask at the beginning, but please like and subscribe. We know we're now in the doldrums of this season at 2-6. So we're going to need your support now more than ever. Appreciate you. Even if you don't feel like watching the tape anymore, just subscribe, hit the like button on each episode. Pay us that, mind. And eventually things are going to get good and it's going to be fun to watch tape of this team again. And it's going to be interesting and exciting.
If you're scrolling through YouTube and you see our thumbnail, just give it a click.
Yeah.
Give it a click and let
and a like. A click
and
a like.
Those 5 seconds pass, hit skip ad, and that's a view. And those views can go a long way for us, and we really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
We need your help because we're at that point of the season where we know interest is about to drop off big time. We've been through this so many times before that we know what's coming, unfortunately. So we're going to also try to mix it up. Don't worry. We'll be creative like we have been in past seasons. We'll get some draft content on with experts. Nick and I haven't touched draft, and we won't touch draft for a while, but we'll get experts on to help us with that. We'll do mailbags and things of that nature for sure. So thank you. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.